Good morning. This is the appointed time. This is 9 o'clock, which is the scheduled time of the meeting, and we have formed a quorum. So I call to order this meeting of the panel on financial affairs. Now, first item on the agenda, confirmation of minutes of meeting and matters arising. Minutes of the meeting on the 7th of January 2013 have been circulated to members via paper number CB-1782/1213. The Secretariat has not received any proposed amendments, so if there are no other views from members, I would like to invite members to confirm the minutes. All right, no objection. Minutes confirmed. Information papers issued since the last meeting. Will members please note that after the regular meeting held on the 4th of March 2013, the panel has received 4 information papers which are set out in the agenda. Third item, date of the next meeting and items for discussion. The next meeting will be held on Monday, the 6th of May 2013, and there are 4 proposed items for discussion. I'd like to seek your views on the proposed items. First, on the briefing on the work of HKMA and electricity charges subsidy, and annual briefing on the work of the Financial Reporting Council and public consultation on improvement of corporate insolvency law, as well as the first one, review of statutory fees and charges of the official receiver's office. If there are no other views, I suggest that the meeting of next time be held at 9:30 till 1, so that we can conclude all 5 discussion items next time. All right, then let's put all the 5 items on the agenda for the next meeting. I'll invite the administration in. The first item has to do with checking the register of the company register. I'll invite all members for this discussion. Good morning, Secretary. If Secretary and members of the administration are ready, may I invite the Secretary to walk us through the paper, and I'll invite members to ask questions. Under the new companies ordinance, in relation to the access to personal data information on the company's register, over the past 3 years, we have conducted extensive consultation. The majority of the respondents are supportive of enhancing protection of personal data privacy. The proposal has also been thoroughly scrutinized by LegCo, and on the types of persons for accessing personal data, we have also reached a consensus. The proposal was passed as legislation, and we have started our preparation work for commencement of the new legislation in 2014. Recently, in relation to the new arrangement, many stakeholders have added views. Some of the views have not been proposed or put forward during the consultation stage, and these views are very diverse. Some indicate support for the legislative proposal but some are against the arrangement or have reservations for this arrangement. Some of the respondents have also put forward ideas for refining the arrangement, including refining the type of persons eligible for accessing personal data, and also to impose conditions to prevent abuse. And in the paper, submitted to members in March, we have already put forward our views in the paper. In relation to disclosure of personal data, in relation to directors of companies, Hong Kong remains a jurisdiction where we enjoy free flow of information. The new arrangement will not affect this arrangement and will not affect the administration's effort in anti-money laundering. But due to the diverse views from various sectors expressed recently in relation to the new arrangement for the inspection of personal information on the company register under the new companies ordinance, we would like to say the following remarks. Our goal is, or our purpose, or our aim is to have the legislation commence in the first quarter of 2014, so that ample time would be allowed for various sectors to get ready for the legislation. In order to fulfill this goal, the legislative work should be done during the interim period in relation to the new arrangement for the inspection of personal information. There could be delay. In order to complete the legislative work within our timetable, we are aimed at introducing the legislative proposal or the bill into LegCo in May, and there are two approaches. First is based on the consensus reached. We put forward the new arrangement for the inspection for personal information on the company's register. And the second approach is to take on board the views expressed recently on the arrangement and have them incorporated in the bill. But because of the diverse and complicated views expressed, it is difficult for us to submit the proposal in May. So if we are to fine-tune the new arrangement, we suggest that we separate the work of legislation and refining the new arrangement for the inspection of personal information on the company register, so that the legislation can take effect in the first quarter in 2014. I'd like to seek members' views on which approach to take, whether the new arrangement should be introduced after the legislation comes into effect. We have 4 members waiting to ask questions, and also others like 3 minutes each. Mr. Tan Ka-pil. Thank you, Madam Chair. We consulted the labor unions, and the FTU supports the proposal in the paper. That is to say, we should put forward the amendment bill first. As for the controversial issues, that is to say, the labor union or the FTU is against the restriction on access to information, personal information on the company's register. We think that this is heading in the right direction. There should be more studies or consultation on this new arrangement. Now, on the paper, there is a proposal in which the person accessing or inspecting the personal information on the register should also leave the personal data for record. And this is quite peculiar, as the person conducting the inspection would be inspected. So I think that the proposal in the paper should be subject to extensive consultation and studies. I see that one of the proposals is about the specified persons eligible for inspection, and we have reservations on the registration of organizations, because first of all, it is not it may not be done immediately, and secondly, some organizations might make use of this new arrangement for conducting business, for example, transaction in relation to the to personal information. So if there are no major hiccups for this arrangement, and in relation to the social and economic development in Hong Kong, if there is no major impact, I think that the current arrangement should be kept. However, subject to the views expressed, there should also be a wide and extensive consultation. Professor Chen, thank you, Mr. Tang, for your suggestions. I'm not going to respond to each and every suggestion from members because we are still at the stage of collecting views and considering the proposal. On personal data privacy, many stakeholders in the community have voiced out the need to enhance protection for personal data privacy. So I hope that the balance can be struck between protection of personal data and flow of information. Mrs. Regina Yip. Madam Chair, I support the government, the administration, in introducing the company's ordinance next year, because we have been scrutinizing the amendment bill for many years, and it would be a pity if this cannot come on board on schedule. As for the inspection of personal information on the register, it's quite strange that some think that ID cards numbers should also be made available for inspection. They can be disseminated online, but in fact it's not the case. Identity card numbers are personal data and is subject to privacy protection. And in fact, it's according to DPP3, the information collected in relation to directors should only be used for the purpose of the company's ordinance. In the past, the information was used for other purpose indiscriminately, and in fact it's against the law if the data is obtained for the purpose of stalking or for conducting business. Well, this is unreasonable. I asked the Commissioner of Police, the ID card numbers can be used for making false applications for schools or for conducting businesses, or false credit cards. So in relation to security, the situation is really bad. I understand for some stakeholders the new arrangement will affect the work of the media, and there should be more discussion. Let's say if there are several John Does in several companies, companies A, B, C, D, they should further verify the information. For example, let the readers know that a certain John Doe exists in companies A, B, C, or D, and let the readers decide who exactly the person is, rather than making public all the information. And recently, according to media reports, some electoral members did not duly report all the information either. So we all have this worry. The proposal is appropriate, and Secretary, you should stand firm. You should not be afraid of being criticized. You should say strong. There should be legislation which is enforceable. Secretary. Yes, I note the member's view. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, I'm not trying to be the opposition party. I don't want to contradict Mrs. Regina Yip's views. I support the Secretary's proposal to temporarily suspend the new arrangement for the inspection of personal information on the company's register, so that the new company's ordinance can take effect in time. There should be a balance between the public's right to inspect personal information on the CR and the protection of personal data privacy. It's fortunate that the ordinance has not taken effect yet. I want to share this experience with you. In the past, I also scrutinized the copyright ordinance. When after it took effect, it was criticized by the public, and there were wide repercussions. I do not totally oppose Mrs. Yip's suggestion just now. Many identities are confirmed via ID numbers, and we need to understand the views of the privacy commissioners and other stakeholders. We need to respect those views, but in the process, I think the more appropriate way is to set up working groups, and we can invite the friends of the media and the privacy commissioner's office to take part in those intensive working groups so that intensive studies can be carried out and a solution agreeable to all can be identified, so that there are different degrees of disclosure whilst the inspection of personal information is still feasible.
Thank you, Mrs. Regina Ip and Mr. Sin Chung Kai. After receiving diversified views from all sectors of the community, we've been continuously discussing with the industry. We have to balance the activities of the media as well as their rights and privacy rights, as well as the request of the trade unions in perusing the register. In May, we have to resolve all issues, so it's not that realistic. That's why I suggest that we handle the company's ordinance first before proceeding to this issue about the register. So thank you, members' comments, and we'll follow up. Dr. Kenneth Chan. Madam Chairman, I also agree to the suggestion of the Bureau, and there should be consultation again. When different stakeholders discuss the issue, I proposed an enhanced system. However, I did not have much opportunity to discuss with the Bureau the detailed concept. In the Bureau's paper, several concerns are raised. They're concerned about the receipt of a great deal of inquiries. Well, he needs not worry if only 4 digits of the ID number are to be disclosed, and a director needs only provide a correspondence address. Then, according to the Bureau, to a very great extent, public demands can be met. And when members of the public want to peruse the details of the register, they have to register. I hope that this registration is a one-off exercise. If it is not personal data, if it is just a generic number, say a group of figures, then it's not personal data. Turning to exemption, you have to collect a great deal of personal data if you want to grant exemption. For example, which media? And you have to collect a lot of personal data for the professional bodies as well. If you say that for a detailed perusal of the register, registration is required, then the user only needs a user number to be stored in the system. On which date and at what time, if a user has perused the register, that sort of information is not personal data. For a criminal investigation, if the investigation is to happen to anybody, the user number as well as the date and time of perusal, you only need to match those data with the personal ID of the user. So that's personal data. I hope that in future I can explain all these details to the Bureau. Anyway, my bottom line is that the Bureau can consider the status of Hong Kong as an international financial center. We need a high degree of transparency. Of course, personal data and security have to be balanced as well. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Chan Kam Lam. Madam Chairman, we have to protect privacy. At the same time, we have to ensure transparency, and we need to strike a balance between the two. The whole world is talking about privacy, but then in our company's ordinance we have a loophole, because the media, for the sake of their own convenience, have been severely criticized this enhanced system. Mr. Sin Chung Kai sounded very appealing. If members agree, up to this, or if members recall, up to this moment, the Democratic Party does not disclose the personal particulars of its members. The Democratic Party is a publicly registered society. Why is it that under the existing laws it can still hide its information? So please do not say one thing and act otherwise. Madam Chairman, for a director or a shareholder of a company, well, say if all directors and shareholders are bad guys, we need to allow people to peruse the register for political reasons, for financial reasons, for personal reasons, or criminal reasons. Yet, the government is not prepared to protect personal privacy because of certain causes of the media. Now all these information are disclosed. Even the particulars of the innocent people can be disclosed. Very simple. Now in the market, whatever we do, that can be known by others. For those who have not committed an offense, they found it a nuisance. For those who have committed an offense, they cannot evade it, of course. Well, very simple. Every day we receive unnecessary messages and telephone calls through our mobile phones. And Madam Chairman, very often you receive unknown telephone calls which are actually a nuisance. So should we be protected under the existing laws? Or should we back down just because the media put up some criticisms? To protect privacy, the existing system is not doing enough. For example, our land registry, our driving licenses, well, many personal particulars are disclosed. Now this time the government has backed down, and even the Privacy Commission has hugely regretted that. So we should enhance the protection of privacy. We're not saying that you can absolutely not peruse the registry. For lawful causes, with lawful means, you can peruse certain particulars. In society, there are diversified views, so it's good for the government to listen to more views. But don't drag this on for too long. This loophole in the company's ordinance is regrettable. Secretary? Well, Mr. Andrew Leung. Well, in the past week or so, because of the passage of the new law, on personal data. Through our mobile phones, we've been receiving a lot of messages asking you to make options. Well, many of us have been disturbed by suspected offenses. Well, the Secretary has proposed something new this time. It's not that ideal, but it is acceptable to give the government more time to deliberate on this. Mrs. Regina Ip was correct just now. The personal data law is not to disallow you to dig up certain information, but you have to act within a certain realm. Banks can do something, but with restriction. A year or two ago, the octopus incident had been blown up to a very huge scale, where our personal particulars may be disclosed. For example, estate agencies might have unlawfully used our personal data to do promotion and publicity. Everybody's privacy should be protected. We must not allow another piece of legislation to undo that protection for privacy. So you can lawfully dig out certain information. Well, the example is Chan Kai Kong. There are dozens of Chan Kai Kong. Well, you can number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you have the correspondence address, you can still find out who Chan Kai Kong is. And if you commit an offense, the law enforcement agencies and departments have all got your particulars. So lawful use is the concern. If you are lawfully using the data, then I can trace you. So the government has to look into this piece of legislation about personal data. You should strike a balance. Some newspapers suggest that all directors of all companies should be concealed such that they can commit any offense they want. Well, I'm not suggesting that. The company's ordinance is something solemn. I hope that you can handle it as soon as possible. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Thank you, Madam Chairman. As I said, during the second and third readings of the laws, the subsidiary legislation, during the scrutiny of the company's ordinance because of filibustering, etc., and also because of the complicated contents of the ordinance, we might not have scrutinized it thoroughly enough. And this rather controversial part of the ordinance will be handled in the way suggested by the administration. I support the government's latest proposal. However, this further in-depth study into the issue must be conducted expeditiously. The right to know and the protection of personal data must be balanced. In the past, we attached importance to privacy. Why is it that for companies' directors, the protection of privacy can be totally disregarded? Well, there is just like being stripped nude. All their particulars are shown to people. Even their ID numbers have to be disclosed in full. People are not satisfied with partial disclosure. As colleagues said, some people try to obtain other people's ID numbers for criminal causes. And we're not just talking about the directors themselves, their family members, their parents, their children, etc. If they live together with the directors themselves, they might also be disturbed. Regrettably, today, we don't have any representative from the Privacy Commissioner's office. I very much want to further understand the views and stance of the Privacy Commissioner.
Well, in the past, I heard his comments. I felt quite puzzled. It seems that he hadn't been very consistent. I'd like to know what his position would be. So I wonder if we can arrange for the Privacy Commissioner to come and discuss with us. Deputy Chairman, Mr. Chan Kin-po. My position is very clear. ID number is obviously a very important personal information. How can anyone with a fee of just tens of dollars be able to inspect thousands of the personal information of thousands of people? I think that this is outrageous, and the administration should not be selective in their enforcement of the law. It's either well, we understand that the political atmosphere now is that the administration has to deal with opposing views, and for those with legitimate reasons to inspect the CR, the administration should make it clear, for example, for winding up of companies, etc. And things should be made clear. The administration should not let people feel that this will be shelved. I think definitely this should not be shelved. I really agree with Mrs. Yip just now. I think the administration should stand firm, because if this is the right way to do it, the administration should do it. You should not be afraid of criticisms. Some say that in Hong Kong, if you shout loud enough, you'll be able to stop anything. I recall that a year ago, many of us were discussing this, and all the legislation, the legislation has been passed, and there is no reason for us to go back. So, Professor Chan, please stand firm. This is what we should do. All right, thank you. Any other members? Mr. Abraham Shack. Chair, I first need to declare that I am the director of many companies. I have duly made the declarations of interest with the LegCo. I don't mind being inspected, but I think that it is the administration's duty to protect my privacy. So it is up to the administration to protect every citizen, be it a company's director or a member of the Democratic Party. The responsibility lies with the administration. So it's for the it's just a kiss of death. You need to be careful. Politically correct doesn't mean that it's politically justified. You may think that something is correct, but it doesn't represent the majority's views. I think that you need to be careful how the balance should be struck. And it is the administration's responsibility to protect each and every citizen. Company directors should not be subject to any special treatment, or protection should not be deprived of them. Before views are formally expressed, I think the administration should think about what to do. The government is just biding time, but it doesn't mean that there is a solution. So what is the view of the administration? What solutions do you have? And how are you going to deal with this problem? Because if you just turn a blind eye, then the problem will continue to escalate. So can you tell us which direction are you heading? All right, Secretary, do you have any timetable? What is your direction? Many members already expressed their views. I have noted their views. I would like to take this time to say the following. In terms of the company's register, undoubtedly there have been discussions from various sectors during the legislative stage. The Bills Committee was chaired by Mr. Andrew Leung, with the participation of many members. I'm sorry, the Bills Committee should be chaired by Mr. Paul Chan, and many members took part in the discussion. Over the past few months, I have been emphasizing this point. We respect the decision of the Legislative Council, and this matter has been thoroughly discussed. And at that time, the LegCo and the administration felt that the balance has been struck. That is the balance between satisfying public need to access information and the protection of privacy, and how the aim of the company's ordinance can be realized. We think that we are able to fulfill this goal, but there are views expressed recently which we feel that we have not considered during the legislative stage. And it's not just about news media. There are other views expressed from other sectors which we think are worthwhile for our reconsideration. Yes, we understand that protection of privacy is important, but at the same time, legitimate activities, including news reporting activities by the media, should also be respected. It's important how we strike the balance. Our suggestion is very simple. For the non-controversial issues in the company's ordinance and the legislation and the subsidiary legislation under it, they can go ahead first. And based on the views collected during this period, we can then discuss with members and stakeholders again. And if we agree with this direction, we're going to further discuss our way forward. If you introduce a new arrangement, it should not be too complicated for us to implement it. So the new system should be such that it is simple enough for implementation. So I would like to complete other areas of work first. Finally, my time. I understand the administration's position. They want the ordinance to take effect in time and to allow some time for controversial issues to be thoroughly discussed, but it should not be left on the back burners for too long. Otherwise, people might feel that this is to be shelved forever. There should not be any double standards. I recall when the council discussed octopus card incident, some members suggested invoking the PNP, and now some members just turn a blind eye to this loophole. I don't think we should adopt this double standard. And I don't know whether the views of the police have been sought. We all know that nowadays it's very prevalent online that somebody's personal information can be dug up on the internet. If you have personal information on the company's register, and if you have a Facebook account, well, naturally you will put down your hobbies, your other information on Facebook, and naturally all this information would be dug up. And we have never conducted any study on the psychological impact on the person involved and the propensity to commit crimes. Let's think about this. If somebody picks up a credit card and wants to steal the credit card for use, the bank would only confirm your identity by asking you questions like date of birth and ID card number, etc. And basically, you have all this information. And I think that there will be a higher chance that crimes can be committed. I don't know whether you have sought the views of the police on this issue. So we need transparency and openness and protection of privacy. And also there is the issue of the propensity to commit crimes. Have you consulted the police? Madam Chair, we have. So I hope that at the next stage you also consult the police. I think that we can think about the new arrangement, because once you become a company's director, then your personal information will be made available through various avenues. Lastly, I need to declare that I'm also the director of companies. I'll allow some time for members to make declarations if necessary. I'll draw a line here, Mr. Dennis KWOK. I'm sorry, I was attending another meeting. I'm late. So I think it's important to protect personal data privacy. But when the administration considers the issue, the legal sector in the past met with the administration, and the Bar Association and the Law Society made this point already. It is not adequate to protect privacy via making new arrangements for the company's register. For example, business registration. As I understand, personal information will also be made public, and also via other registration systems with government departments. There should be a comprehensive consideration. The paper mentions that the matter involves legal and other aspects. It's very complicated. All these needs to be considered, and I support the administration's suggestion. We really need to consider very thoroughly. The international media already questioned whether this would affect our status as an international financial center. So the administration, I hope, would make use of this opportunity to review the situation with other government departments. Madam Chair, this is my view. Thank you. Actually, we have drawn a line. Mr. Albert Ho, please be brief. I just want to talk about one piece of information, Secretary. If we are concerned about the protection of privacy, you should look at the example of the lands registry. Now, in fact, if the tycoon originally on the lands register passes away, then the inheritance, along with the estate, etc., would be and also the will would be registered on the land registry, and it's publicly accessible. The will, well, it's inevitable because it has to do with the estate, and all the inheritance or the estate would be made available to the public. So I don't think it's properly balanced if this fragmented approach is taken. Secretary, I really can't, from my position, respond on the point of privacy protection policy. But in terms of companies, we respect privacy because this is the spirit of the laws of Hong Kong. At the same time, the new companies ordinance is about enhancing corporate governance. This is also one of our policy objectives. Now, our proposal is to temporarily shelve the new arrangement for inspection of the company's register, because at the time our focus wasn't on this new arrangement. Our focus was on the subsidiary legislation. In terms of the time allowed for discussion, I think that it should not be confined on by the previous scope, or we need more time, but I will not say that we'll expand the scope to review the whole situation of privacy protection. In terms of privacy protection in relation to the company's ordinance, we would like to have more time for more thorough discussion so that the subsidiary legislation would be able to reflect the views of various members. In fact, we've drawn a line, Mr. Shag.
Mr. Abraham Shag, I'd like to adopt a more macro view. I'm looking at the legislature-executive relationship. Now, the executive has introduced a piece of legislation to the legislature, which has scrutinized the piece of legislation. And now the legislature is going back to say that the piece of legislation is not in order. In fact, during the scrutiny of the bill, we examined a number of issues, and the ordinance was enacted. Now, some people are saying that we've not been doing enough during the course of scrutiny. So it seems that we're led by certain parties, and we've been fooled around. Well, members have supported the bill for the sake of a harmonious society. We have to address the concerns of all sectors of the community, but at the same time, we have to respect the rule of law. So I hope the Bureau can consider this. All right, please explain to this panel how you're going to proceed with this. Well, the ordinance has been amended a number of times. I repeated on many occasions that I respect the decision of the Legislative Council. The bill had been enacted. We should respect the decision of the LegCo, and we must satisfy statutory requirements as far as possible. Well, some members would like to declare interest, right? You would like to declare that you are company's directors? Yes, please raise your hands. Those who are company's directors, would you please raise your hands? Mr. Christopher Chung, do you have to declare interest? Well, all participating members today are company's directors. Well, I raised my hand, but I don't think I need to declare that interest because there's no pecuniary interest involved. All right, so much for this item. We'll proceed to the next one. And then to address members' requests, next time when we revisit the issue, the Secretariat will ask the Privacy Commissioner to attend. So we'll try to handle this controversial issue. Next, extension of a supernumerary administrative officer staff grade C post for the establishment of an independent insurance authority and a policyholders protection fund. If the government's representatives are ready, they can introduce the paper to us. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members. The purpose of this paper is to seek members' views on the proposed extension of a supernumerary administrative officer staff grade C, AOSGC D2 post, which will mainly be responsible for insurance policies and related matters. The more important issue is a piece of legislation to establish an insurance authority. We've just completed a public consultation and drafted the bill. Our objective is that within this legislative session, we'll introduce to the LegCo the final draft of the bill. We would like to set up a policy fund to protect policyholders. We reported to the LegCo and the report was submitted, and we're now drafting the amendment bill in the hope that in 2013-14 the bill can be introduced into LegCo. Why do we need an extension of the post? As introduced in the paper, in April 2011 to the 14th of October 2013, the post will be there for 30 months. Upon the creation of the post, in particular in terms of establishing an insurance authority, there are complicated issues to handle, and we've received a lot of views. And technical views have to be discussed with the stakeholders, such that we need to extend our work. That's why we're submitting this paper to ask that the post be extended to complete the work on the insurance authority, the IA. As I said just now, we'll also draft a piece of legislation on the Policies Protection Fund. We have the drafting brief, and we would like to complete the bill as soon as possible in order to safeguard the interests of policyholders. Well, that's my brief introduction. Madam Chairman, I'm pleased to answer members' questions. With the support of this panel, we'll submit the proposal to the ESC in May 2013 and to go to Finance Committee in June 2013. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong, 3 minutes, please. Thank you, Madam Chairman. In this economic society, the significance of the insurance industry is ever growing. As a result, conflicts emerge. For the establishment of the IA and the Policyholders Protection Fund, we should proceed as soon as possible. Basically, the DAB supports the proposals of the administration. What I would like to ask is, for the IIA and the PPF, will they be implemented concurrently? Yes, administration. Madam Chairman, according to our proposed timetable, we hope that before the end of this year, we'll be able to introduce the piece of legislation on the IIA to the LegCo. Depending on the legislative timetable, we hope that the IIA can be set up in 2015. Well, it depends on the legislative timetable. As regards the establishment of the PPF, we would like to introduce the bill into LegCo in 2013-14. And after introducing the bill into LegCo, it also depends on the legislative progress. Of course, there is a merit in establishing both concurrently. Still, it depends on the legislative progress. Madam Chairman, in other words, the original intention of the administration is to concurrently establish the IIA and the PPF. So that's their subjective wish. Of course, they cannot control the Legislative Council as well as its scrutiny process, but your legislative intent is to do it concurrently, right? Well, our intention is to complete both tasks as soon as possible because both laws have significant impact on the interest of the policyholders. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, Madam Chairman, the Democratic Party supports the establishment of the IIA as soon as possible. Well, I support the proposal on the establishment. Well, what if they cannot complete the work within the scheduled time? Are they going to come to LegCo again for funding? Well, the mandatory provident fund was established, and then they had an authority, and the Bureau, the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau did take part in the initial period of the establishment of the MPFA. Apparently, in the first 2 years, you will draft the laws, and of course, the relevant officers will have to come to LegCo to explain the details to us, and then we have a scrutiny process, and then we may have subsidiary legislation. So do you think 2 years will be enough? Or are you thinking that if you cannot complete your work in 2 years' time, you ask for another 2 years? Administration, well, we try to make an honest and effective assessment as far as possible. Well, basically, there are 2 pieces of legislation here. The major legislative proposals for the IIA had been under a 3-month consultation in October last year. We're prepared to, in the middle of this year, report back to this panel the consultation results and our ultimate recommendations. At the same time, we are drafting the bill. We are confident that by the end of this year, the bill can be introduced into LegCo for scrutiny. Now, this post is up to the 30th of December or October 2015. If the legislative process is smooth, the IIA can be established in 2015. Well, on the date of the 30th of October 2015, Mr. Sin Chung Kai was very correct. In the initial period after the enactment of the law, there are still transitional arrangements to be made. In our legislative suggestions, some self-disciplined institutions would have to be converted into statutory institutions under regulation. But still, we would like to complete our work by the 15th of October 2015. 31st of October 2015. Madam Chairman, both establishments are significant events for the insurance industry, so we would like the administration to have sufficient manpower for that. The representativeness of the number of directors, intermediaries, etc. are major issues. Secondly, the penalty on intermediaries is really too heavy. Well, this is different from those under the regulation of the SFC. Penalty can run up to hundreds of millions of dollars. But still, for these intermediaries, the penalty can run up to $10 million. And then registration systems, penalty regime, etc., etc. We would like to have the participation of the industry itself. So I'd like the administration to do this well. we spend so much money in the hope that the insurance system can be enhanced to benefit the consumers. At the same time, we must not scare people off from the insurance industry. Bureau, yes, we noted Mr. Chan's comments. During the consultation period, we received brief comments from Mr. Chan. We'll appropriately amend our original proposals. As I said, in the middle of this year, the consultation results and our revised proposals will be introduced into this panel for further scrutiny.
Finally, Mr. Hon Dennis KWOK has already stated the DAB's position. We support the proposal, but I'd like the Deputy Secretary to explain to us if you are sufficiently staffed. Can you tell us the timetable when you can respond to views of the sector? I have attended a number of these consultation forums. The sector expressed grave concerns about the proposal. They don't think that their views have been responded to, and they are concerned about the timetable, in particular the representativeness of the IAA, whether it can truly represent the sector. On the face of it, the penalties are really out of proportion. They are just too harsh for practitioners. And we don't want to see these disproportionate penalties being introduced. And on the Policyholders Protection Fund, the sector also expressed concerns. The winding up of one insurance companies will affect other insurers. So my question is, when are you planning to respond to these controversial views to address the concerns of the sector? My answer is very simple. In the middle of this month, when we submit the proposal to the panel for discussion, this will be the time about the views expressed by the sector. For example, in relation to penalty levels, I'd like to clarify this point here. For intermediaries in the insurance sector, it covers a wide scope. We're talking about individual agents as intermediaries. We're also talking about international corporations. And these are large corporations. And when these corporations misconduct themselves, penalties are necessary. We need to strike a balance between the development of the sector and the interest of policyholders. We'd like to discuss with this council and try to find the balance point together. Do you mean the middle of the year or middle of the month? It should be middle of the year. All right, middle of the year, that's before June. Can I take it that way? We hope that we can introduce that by June. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, Madam Chair. I need to declare interest because Aon is my client, but I'd like to ask the administration about the penalty system under the new Independent Insurance Authority. Is it part of the authority that you have a tribunal mechanism, or will there be another mechanism to arbitrate on the matters of disciplinary actions against intermediaries, so on and so forth? Madam Chair, our proposal is that, first of all, the major provisions under the ordinance is that in relation to credential regulations, these insurers will be regulated, and at present the insurance intermediaries are self-regulated via 3 self-regulators, and our proposal is to set up the Independent Insurance Authority. on the one hand, we will preserve the mechanism to ensure credit integrity, and at the same time, the work of the 3 self-regulators will be absorbed by the IIA, and that includes inspection and investigation, and also sanction against related disciplinary actions. And the aggrieved subject can pursue the avenue of appeal via the Insurance Appeals Tribunal, which will be chaired by a High Court judge to handle appeal cases. And aggrieved appellants can pursue their appeals at the Court of Appeal. I'd like the DS to note that there are views and opposing views from the sector, and they've urged for an opportunity to come to this council and speak to the administration. When you come to a decision, I believe that we will make this arrangement, so please seriously consider the views of the sector. This proposal is about extension of the post, but I'd like you to note the views anyway. So much for this item. Now we need to state our position, and this proposal will be submitted to the ESC for discussion. From members' views expressed just now, I see that there is no objection to this proposal. So much for this item. Next item is proposal to raise the maximum amount of borrowings under the government bond program.
好，咁由於呢個項目咧係涉及立法建議一。
This is a legislative proposal, so all members have been invited to take part in the discussion of this item. The administration has also put forward a paper, so if the administration is ready, please walk us through the paper. Thank you, Madam Chair. The government bond program was introduced in 2009 after the setting up of a bond fund, and the operation has been very smooth. Be it institutional bonds and retail bonds, we see that the GBP has promoted the development of a bond market in Hong Kong, and we anticipate that the bonds issued or bonds to be issued under the GBP will soon reach the maximum of $100 billion approved by LegCo earlier. And we would like to seek LegCo's approval to raise the maximum amount of borrowings under the GBP from $100 billion to $200 billion. And on this topic, I'd like to invite my colleague, Mr. Jackie Liu, to give you some background information and to introduce the proposal to members. Thank you, Madam Chair. Some background information for members. Reference in 2009-2010 budget, the FS proposed to implement the GBP, the government bond program, to promote sustainable development of the bond market. So in 2009, the LegCo passed a resolution under the Public Finance Ordinance authorizing the administration to set up the bond fund for managing sums raised under the GBP. And at the same time, in July 2009, another resolution was passed under the Loans Ordinance authorizing the administration to borrow a maximum amount of outstanding principal at any time of $100 billion or equivalent for the purposes of the bond fund. And in this year's budget, the Financial Secretary announced 2 initiatives relevant to GBP. The first one is to expand the size of the GBP from the current $100 billion to $200 billion so as to provide adequate room for GBP to continue. And the FS also announced in this year's budget that further issuance of inflation-linked retail bond, that's I-bond, will be launched with a size of up to $10 billion. And I'll take this opportunity to brief members on the progress made under GBP since 2007, and also to let members know the development of the bond market in Hong Kong. And we introduced 24 tendering exercise for institutional bonds. And at the end of March 2013, the GB's outstanding is 50.5 billion institutional government bonds. And over the past years, we have also issued 2 rounds of I-bond, and that's $20 billion retail government bonds. And at the end of March 2013, the outstanding GB is standing at $70.5 billion. And by the end of August 2013, some other additional bonds were issued, including 10 billion I-bond and 6.5 billion institutional government bonds, and the total outstanding amount is expected to reach $87 billion at the end of August 2013, which is quite close to the maximum amount of borrowings of $100 billion permissible under the Loans Ordinance. And I'd like to brief members on the 2 aspects of the government bonds, namely institutional and retail bonds. And over the past years, we issued altogether $64.5 billion worth of institutional government bonds. And between April and August 2013, we are going to further issue $6.5 billion institutional bonds, so that after its launch in July 2009, we altogether will have issued $71 billion institutional government bonds, and we will continue to issue bonds in a sustainable manner. Our practice is that either in January or July of every year, we will announce the timetable for the issuance of bonds with tenors of between 2 years and 10 years. And on the one hand, we will ensure a steady and consistent supply of bonds by the public sector, and we also need to ensure that these bonds will be taken up by the public market. And the primary dealers' views will be sought by the administration to gauge the market investment sentiment and response. And all along, the progress has been smooth and positive response has been received. And if the resolution is passed by LegCo to raise the maximum amount of borrowings, then we'll continue to plan for the issuance of bonds after September 2013, and we'll also announce the timetable for the issuance of institutional government bonds for the next year. And we have also reviewed the situation. We find that we have bonds of varying maturities that can satisfy the demand of different types of institutional investors. For example, commercial banks favor short-term bonds, investment funds favor medium-term bonds, and there is a demand for long-term bonds among insurance companies and pension funds. And all in all, the institutional bonds are well received by the market, and the bid-to-cover ratio averaged to 3.32 which shows that excess demand for government bonds. And we have also gauged the response of the market. And since the introduction of the program, we have been able to attract investors or non-bank investors who had never participated in the Hong Kong dollar bond market before. And in this chart, we can see the percentage breakdown of investors, of institutional GBs tenders. We can see that the program has been very successful in widening the scope of investors to non-bank investors. At the same time,
non-government bond institutional GBs have been admitted into a number of benchmark bond indices such as the Barclays Asian Local Currency Diversified Bond Index and the Market iBox ABF Pan Asia Index. This helps attract benchmark tracking investors such as fund managers to the local bond market. It is worth noting that the Hong Kong dollar bond market only managed to get into some of these indices following the implementation of the GBP. So this has a positive impact on the market, will gradually enhance the size of issuance. We're talking about two issues of the outstanding institutional GBs. They have already reached a size of over 7.8 billion Hong Kong dollars. Such a size is considered by the investing community as efficient for trading and investment purposes, which help promote secondary market liquidity. Although we have absorbed a number of sizable indices, the bond market of Hong Kong is relatively small. We're still unable to become a member of global bond indices like that of the Citibank, the scale of which is at least 390 billion Hong Kong dollars. Starting from last year, the Citibank has already included Hong Kong's market for observation. Since we don't have a sufficient size, Malaysia and Singapore were respectively in 2005 and 2007 included in the Citigroup index. So we have to catch up with other markets in terms of size. Well, after explaining the development of institutional GBs, I'd like to say something about retail GBP. In the past year, the Financial Secretary said that there should be 2 series of 3-year I-bonds, each with a size of 10 billion Hong Kong dollars, which were well received. And the last issue had broken the record. 10 to 15% of the subscribers were actually first-time subscribers. So we've actually enhanced public interest in the issuance of bonds, GBs or GBPs, so the government is satisfied. After observing the market, we see that the demand for GBPs is rising. And for quality GBPs, including Hong Kong dollar GBPs, interests are rising. And with a number of regulatory provisions like Basel III, in 2015, the liquidity ratio will have to satisfy certain requirements. So we need to issue quality GBPs to satisfy market demands. And we see that investment banks have been increasing their share in the market, and Hong Kong is one of the few markets with a AAA rating. So we'll be able to attract both local and extraterritorial investors. And also the issuance of GBPs offer another channel of financial intermediation. This chart shows you that year on year we have a growing Hong Kong dollar bond issuances. And you see the size has actually grown from 138.5 billion Hong Kong dollars in 2008 to 252.8 billion dollars in 2015. So we'll be providing another effective financing channel for Hong Kong. And this is very important to Hong Kong's banking sector and equity market. Well, after reviewing past developments, we envisage that at the end of August 2013, the remaining quota will be 87 billion Hong Kong dollars only, out of the 13 billion Hong Kong dollars. That is not sufficient to satisfy the growing demand. It's also not sufficient to meet the growing demand from fund managers. It's not sufficient to expand to a scale eligible for inclusion in some of the most widely tracked global bond benchmark indices. So we propose to expand the size of GBP to continue to operate GBP in a sustainable manner to demonstrate to investors the administration's determination to develop the local bond market. If we enlarge the GBP program in accordance with the existing circumstances, market trends, the size of the issuance of GBPs will be appropriately adjusted. So we'll adopt a flexible approach in setting issuance parameters of bond issuances to meet future demand, having regard to prevailing market conditions and GBP's capacity to support the development of different segments of the bond market. And the existing framework in managing funds will continue with all proceeds credited to the bond fund. And the bond fund should meet expenses of GBP, and the bond fund is placed with the exchange fund for investment. And there will be reinvestment of the funds raised. At the moment, the GBP is not part of our fiscal reserve. Rather, it is placed under the monetary authority for general investment. We hope that within this legislative session, we can seek LegCo's approval as soon as possible of a resolution under the Loans Ordinance to raise the maximum amount of borrowings that may be outstanding by way of principal to 200 billion Hong Kong dollars within this year. Subject to the LegCo's approval of the resolution by way of a positive vetting process, we will have certainty to plan the timing of the forthcoming and future GBs under both the institutional and retail parts of the GBP. My colleagues and I will be happy to answer questions from members. 6 members have signified their wish to ask questions. Now, please note that this item was not on the original agenda of this meeting. Well, at 10:45 a.m., I have to chair another meeting. So I'd better hand over the chair to the Deputy Chairman. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Well, thank you, the 2 chairmen. The DAB has all along been supportive of the SARG's effort in developing our bond market. In 2007, we published a report and put forth certain proposals. For example, all profits tax on bonds proceeds had been abolished. As regards the size of bond funds, we support the administration's proposal, but the ceiling of $100 billion was suggested by the SARG in 2007 for 5-year to 10-year bonds. So that was a long-term consideration. Well, looking back, were we too conservative by setting the ceiling at $100 billion? Now we propose $200 billion for 5-year to 10-year bonds. Is this again too conservative? Should we revise that upwards to say $300 billion? And then after a certain period of time, we can consider further development. That will be a more prudent approach. So I'd like to know the policy considerations of the administration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Wong, for your support. Yes, in 2009, when we formulated the GBP, it was a new program. At that time, we did say that we would use 5 to 10 years to gauge the experience gathered from the issuance. In the past few years, the program was quite smooth, and I can say that it's actually successful. And very soon we'll reach the ceiling. Now we propose to increase the ceiling from $100 billion to $200 billion. After all, that is 100% increase. We have to consider the sustainability of the program. Of course, we have to consider market conditions, the capacity of the market to absorb the bonds, and so forth. In Asia, at the moment, Hong Kong has a relatively high standard, and there is a demand for low-risk bonds. When compared with the Western countries, like European countries, our risk is rather low and their risk is rather high. So we believe that we can accept a ceiling of $200 billion. So that's one consideration. In future, if our economic growth warrants a further justification, we would come back to this panel to seek approval for a further adjustment. Mr. Kenneth Leung, well, we're in support of the proposals because there will be a positive impact on diversification of products. I'd like to seek 2 clarifications from the administration. For the proposed upward adjustment of the ceiling to $200 billion, you're only talking about bonds issued by the Hong Kong MA. MTRCL bonds and AA bonds will not be covered, right? Yes, you're correct. Well, a second clarification. Hong Kong dollar bonds can be issued, but what about medium-term notes programs, which can issue bonds in different currencies? I think you're only talking about Hong Kong dollar bonds, right? Mr. Chairman, in the main, our objective is to develop the local bond market. So our focus now is to develop Hong Kong dollar bonds. However, in the resolution, we do not confine this exercise to Hong Kong dollar bonds. On page 7 of the PowerPoint presentation, we have a percentage breakdown of investors of institutional GBs at tenders. We support the development of the bond market because the funds under the MPF only cover very low-risk investment instruments. Now, if you look at this chart, you can see that pension funds only take up 1.3%. Can we make sure that the investment funds under the MPF are become more interested in these bonds?
We've also noted this issue. May I defer to my colleague from HKMA to take this question? The chart on slide 7 shows the categories of investors of institutional GBs. Different investors have different views on the tendering of bonds because the technicalities involved is quite complicated. Some investors may rather wait for the tendering to be completed before buying those bonds from market makers in the secondary market. So you see that bank accounts for the major type of investors. When these investors take part in the market, they would like to have greater clarity as far as the price is concerned before they buy those bonds from the secondary market. Can I ask for more information? On slide 11 shows some statistics concerning the bond market. I'd like to see if there is information that shows Hong Kong's bond market, how it fares with other bond markets in Asian countries. I can give you this information, but probably after the meeting. Right, I'll read out the names: Chen Kam Lam, Sin Chung Kai, Christopher Chung, Tan Ka Biu, Dennis KWOK, and Jeffrey Lam. Mr. Chen Kam Lam. Thank you, Chairman. We support the administration's proposal in raising the maximum amount of borrowings for GBP. It is conducive to the development of bond and debt markets in Hong Kong. Just now, the administration said that the purpose is to promote the development of bond market in Hong Kong. However, it's not limited to Hong Kong dollar bond. There should be also other currencies as well. We hope that after raising the maximum by $100 billion, a greater variety can be developed. For example, how we can cater for the needs of retail investors in Hong Kong, and whether more products can be introduced for retail investors so that they don't need to resort to secondary markets. Very often in IPO offerings, very often the subscription quota will be taken up by major banks and large investors, and individual investors only enjoy a small proportion. This is not very reasonable. Even for small bond agents or firms, they find it quite hard because investment banks have taken up a larger share. For iBond, we think our purpose is for more retail investors to get the subscription quota so that the investment return can be guaranteed because it's pegged to inflation rate. So my question is how you can encourage more individuals to take part in the investments. And my second question is that the currency should not be limited to Hong Kong dollar. We have aspirations to invest in RMB bonds. I'm not concerned that there could be conflict with other bond issues in the market, because we want to raise the maximum amount, and I'd like to ask the administration for a response. Ms. Yan, would you like to respond? Thank you, member, for your support of the program. On the type of bonds, we also hope that the program can remain flexible. And in our past experience, we have made much effort in promoting the program to retail investors, basically through the issuance of inflation-linked bonds. Basically, among the $100 billion quoting, $30 billion have been allocated to retail retail bonds. In fact, for I bonds, all were for retail investors. Now, and from the figures shown, every time we were able to attract fresh retail investors in our program, and this will continue to be our indicator and our consideration. As for other bonds of other currencies, as I said just now, in the past, we hadn't seen quite many Hong Kong dollar bonds, and we'd like to promote the development of Hong Kong dollar bond market through the GBP. For RMB bonds, we see that the return can be 20 times or 30 times, including the RMB bonds issued by the central government or non-central government, or even other foreign institutions would issue bonds using Hong Kong as a platform. Last year, we have $290 billion or so renminbi bonds issued, and we'll also look at this situation as part of our consideration. Next, Mr. Sin Chung Kai, I'd like to ask about risk management. Now, I understand your justification in raising the maximum amount, and that is to promote the development of bond market. But this is the case that there will be a balance sheet stating the income and expenses. And can you give me your report card for this GBP? What is the overall situation, profit or loss? And for the proposal to raise the amount from $100 to $200 billion, do you have any projections on the market's capacity? Perhaps I will say a few words, and then I'll defer to my ex-chairman colleagues to supplement my answer. On the operation of the GBP, or the bond fund, in the estimates every year, the expenditure will be set out. Basically, it involves two parts. One is one is the capital, the other is interest, and we do make public these two sets of figures. It's in the government's estimates. On the expenditure on interest in 2011-12, the amount was slightly over 700 million. In 2012-13, it's slightly over 1.2 billion, and we expect that in 2013-14, the expenditure would be $1.7 billion or so. One of the questions asked was about the capital being put in the reserve of the HKMA for investment purpose. And basically, we follow the same formula as used in the exchange fund, and that is the investment return over the past 6 years on average, so on and so forth. I will see if my colleague, Mr. Edmund Lau, would like to further elaborate. I think Ms. Yan's answer is very clear. So, on the one hand, you issue bonds, you collect funds, and then you put the money in the exchange fund for investment. I'd like to know the operation. Overall speaking, is government making a profit or incurring a loss? In 2009, since the establishment of the bond fund, what is the accumulation or accumulated balance? So please tell us the risk aspect for raising the amount from 100 to 200 billion. Overall speaking, is the government making a profit or a loss? Who would like to take this question? I need to supplement, apart from expenditure on interest, administrative costs also counts. For example, every round of the issuance of I-bond, we need to arrange for institutional institutions to take part in it, and there are administrative costs involved. To draw a line and say whether overall speaking we're making a profit or a loss, I think it's too early for us to say, because investment return relies very much on market fluctuations. We are not using capital to make investments to make a profit, and we have undertaken that a fiscal prudence will be adhered to. Perhaps you can further respond to members' questions. We have 5 more members wanting to ask questions. If there are no other questions, I'll draw a line here. Next, Mr. Christopher Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. The financial sector strongly supports the administration in raising the maximum amount of borrowings under the GBP. We think that is conservative. If possible, the maximum can be further raised. Over the past few years, there has been rapid progress as far as the government bond program is concerned. It's very well received by investors. It's conducive to the development of bond market in Hong Kong. But at the same time, I see that institutional investors enjoy a larger share of the market comparing to retail investors. So my question is, bonds issued for institutional investors and for retail investors, what is the proportion? The other question is about renminbi bonds. It's very popular in the market. To enhance our status as an international financial center, will the administration consider that a certain percentage of bonds will be issued in renminbi? Ms. Yan. These 2 points have been touched on in our earlier discussions about the proportion between institutional and retail investors, and whether more or high proportion of retail bonds should be adopted. Let's say a 100 billion maximum. Well, there are other technicalities involved, but let's say if we take the 100 billion I-bonds to be issued in the 3rd round, altogether we would have issued 30 taking into account the third round involving 10 billion. Altogether, there would be 30 billion out of $100 billion bond issued for retail investors.
Of course, we'll give consideration to our past experience as well as market conditions. At present, we're mainly issuing Hong Kong dollar bonds. We're very much encouraged by the development of renminbi bonds. So overall speaking, we'll make reference to that prosperous market. Mr. Tan Ka-pio, Mr. Chairman, I do not understand why the administration was so ambiguous on Mr. Sin Chung Kai's question. Interest expenditure $1.2 billion for 2012-13. Investment proceeds $3.3 billion. Of course, there may be a difference between a good year and a bad year. Well, investment $1.2 billion. Investment return $3.3 billion. Well, to me, it seems very good. We managed to develop the market as well as bringing proceeds to the government's coffers. So why is it that we cannot have 30-year bonds? Why restricted to 10 years? And $20 billion can be given to the two major vibrant investors, because trustees may pocket some of the proceeds. So for those members of the public who really choose from these funds, eventually they may not use this particular bond. Say, can $10 or $20 billion out of the $100 billion be reserved for ordinary employees? Then we'll have a win-win-win situation. Not just the government and the financial sector will benefit, but also the ordinary public. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to state in a clearer manner the relationship between investment and return. For 2011-12, not just 2011-12, but in other years, since the launch of the program, the investment return was higher than interest expenditure plus administrative costs. In the past few years, we had very low interests, so interest expenditure had been on the low side. We have agreed to the framework. Sorry, I have to interrupt you. I hope you can answer the MPF question. Mr. Chairman, will consider the overall picture. In fact, we did communicate with the MPFA on this issue. We need to keep some flexibility for the whole program. We may not be able to immediately draw lines on various types of investments. Well, Mr. Tang, perhaps I should add that if a certain fund is or bond is of AAA rating, then probably the risk is very low. Mr. Dennis KWOK. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to follow up on this. In paragraph 20 of the paper, the administration explained the management of proceeds. But then there's insufficient information about the management and use of proceeds. And just now members were very concerned about those issues. Now the program has been in place for quite some time already on the management and use of funds. do we have some new ideas from the administration? In the long run, how can the fund be best utilized? Ms. Yan? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we have to look at the overall objective of the GBP. The overall objective is to further promote the development and sustainability of the bond market of Hong Kong. So the use of the funds must also satisfy that objective. The government has undertaken to adopt a more prudent approach in investments. So these are the two underlying principles for managing the fund and its investment. In our opinion, it is better to put it under the exchange fund of the Hong Kong MA. That's a more prudent approach. If there are other views, we can consider them. Well, apart from this prudent or conservative approach, if the ceiling is to be further enhanced in future, can the use of the fund be amended under the resolution? Ms. Yan? After all, the GBP was established in 2009 and the resolution was quite new. I did not personally participate in the scrutiny and discussion of the resolution, but I understand the underlying principles. At this juncture, it's not appropriate to make adjustments and amend the resolution. We have to examine the actual operation of the fund first. Well, it has been in operation for a few years only. I think we need to observe it for a bit longer to see whether or not in terms of operation there's room for changes. Well, principles have to be thoroughly examined. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My association is in support of the proposals in the paper. We envisage the feedback to be good because at the moment the inflation rate is quite high, exceeding 4%. Well, if the feedback is good, will the government consider launching more? In my opinion, Hong Kong's bond market is still very small. We absolutely have room for further expansion. Will the government consider issuing more bonds? Now we have a reserve of $700 billion. But don't forget government debts and payable debts in future. You have to include them. Many people don't want to include them. At present, we have quite a huge reserve. Under such a circumstance, it's easier to issue bonds. Well, if you have cleared all your reserves, then the situation may change in terms of bond issuance. So given such a huge reserve at the moment, the administration should do more in terms of bond issuance. Has the government considered formulating guiding policies to encourage enterprises to issue bonds and to encourage the issuance of renminbi bonds? Well, if the government can do this, then we can stimulate the bond market. Can I have a response from the administration? Ms. Yan? Mr. Chairman, we share that thought. In fact, the administration can further develop the bond market. That's why we are seeking to increase the ceiling from $100 billion to $200 billion. such that the program can be further developed. As for bond issuance, I have to say that bonds are tools to raise funds. When compared with direct loans from banks and the procurement of shares, bonds are worthy of our consideration. Of course, we have to consider risks as well. Recently, we observed that there had been more bonds from enterprises. In terms of fundraising costs, bonds issued by enterprises are quite attractive. Of course, these are commercial decisions. We'll try to help them by streamlining procedures. At present, for a listed enterprise under the Hong Kong Acts, if bonds are to be issued, we can complete our processing and vetting work in 24 hours' time. So that's what we're willing to do, both in terms of quality and quantity. Mr. James Tan. Mr. Chairman, the upcoming trend of interest rates is uncertain. In recent years, the bond market of Hong Kong has been quite prosperous. But of course, government bonds have different objectives. Many large corporations in Hong Kong have issued bonds in the past as a means of fundraising. Now, some corporations may not be able to take out loans from banks, then they may turn to bond issuance. $2,800 billion is quite a huge amount of reserve. We're not like the South American countries. In other jurisdictions, bonds are issued more frequently. Here in Hong Kong, my understanding is that the government is issuing bonds as a means of investment for the general public so that they can reap a return better than the interest rate. If my understanding is correct, then the nominal value of these bonds must be low, and we must not allow large banks to monopolize the market. So I'd like to know whether or not at present most of these bonds are in the hands of the general public, but not in the big corporations. And what about bank costs? Are they as high as those under the MPF? Ms. Yan? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The analysis of the honorable member is very correct. At the moment, the nature of government bonds in Hong Kong is different from that in other jurisdictions, given the robust finance of Hong Kong. For retail bonds, most of them are issued on an inflation-related basis. We issued $100 billion of retail bonds, $10 billion worth of retail bonds, and in future we'll issue another $10 billion worth of such bonds. As for costs, the banks will try to match the objective of the government to encourage more participation from retail investors. So we will try to minimize costs incurred. There were 3 issuances of I-bonds, and all proceeds went into the public coffers. or rather the accounts of the general public. Well, how to ensure that wealth will go to the hands of the general public and not the hands of the big corporations? Well, for a simple explanation, out of $100 billion, $30 billion go to the retail investors. So for sure, $30 billion will go to the general public. Last year, in most cases, the general public subscribed to only 3 to 4 lots of I-bonds. Well, so much for this discussion. Any balance sheet? If yes, can you let us have copies of them? Yes. In the past, when we answered electrical questions, we also mentioned the information.
About this item, the government, the administration intends to introduce a relevant resolution within this legislative year, and we will take the positive vetting procedure. And do we all agree to the introduction of a resolution? If so, I'll wrap up this item. Thank you, members of the administration. Next item, relocation of the printing workshop of Government Logistics Department. I'll invite the administration in.
Okay,
if the administration is ready, please walk us through the paper. Thank you, Chairman. Now, the printing workshop of the Government Logistics Department provides printing service for various government departments, including consultation paper, reports, examination papers in public exams, and gazette notices. Since 1985, the workshop has been located at Cornwall House, and our proposal is to relocate the printing workshop to Taiwan. And according to this proposal, the entire 6th, 8th, and 9th floor has to be refurbished, as well as part of the 10th floor for use by the printing workshop. Some ancillary facilities will also need to be carried out or provided at ground level and other floors of the GLC, the Government Logistics Center, Taiwan. And the printing workshop will be provided with some of the following facilities, including fully air-conditioned or ventilated workshops for printing machineries, a paper testing laboratory, a paper store, a central compressor room, and a computer-to-plate making room, etc. The proposal is based on the fact that since the location of printing workshop at Cornwall House in 1985, the area has changed from an industrial area to a commercial area. The government's accommodation policy is to relocate government offices with no location requirements out of high-value areas for more effective use of land resources. We therefore consider it necessary to relocate the printing workshop away from Taikoo Place. As for the Government Logistics Center, it is located at the waterfront of Chongfu Road in Taiwan, which is a GIC site. In the vicinity of Chongfu Road, the sites are basically GIC sites and industrial buildings. At present, the GLC is mainly used for storage and distribution of government supplies and related purposes. The paper store of the printing workshop is also located in GLC. At present, the GLD has to transport paper stored in the paper store in GLC at Taiwan to the printing workshop in Cornwall House at Quarry Bay. And the delivery team stationed at GLC has to pick up the printed products from the printing workshop for delivery to government departments concerned. Co-location of the printing workshop, paper store, and delivery team under one roof can bring about synergy and further enhance operational efficiency. Subject to FC's approval, we plan to start the refurbishment works in the fourth quarter of 2013 for completion in the third quarter of 2015. We urge members to support our proposal to relocate the printing workshop. Questions from members? Mr. Sin Chung Kai, 3 minutes. Chairman, I have a question. The administration has this Transport and Housing Bureau, which is conducting a consultation on railway strategy, and there are two options for Silsaiwan spur line. One option involves reclamation of land, which affects the vicinity area. We're talking about things happening 8 or 10 years down the road. I think probably after relocation, 10 years or 8 years down the road, it would have been paid off. Well, let's say you are relocating the printing workshop and moving it away from high-value areas. I support that. But for the new location, if Silsaiwan is to be developed or the railway is to be developed, what will happen? Will this be demolished? I'm not quite sure if these several $100 million will go to waste. And also for Silsaiwan spur line, it's not a confirmed proposal yet, and there are options to go, whether land will be reclaimed, and one of the options might affect your center. So I don't know how to put it. Will you discuss with the THB and see if there will be any impact on your center? And after relocation, I mean, after 8 years or 10 years operating there, it will have been paid off, so relocation will be necessary. So you need to do some calculations. Of course, in Taikoo Place, nowadays the rental is very high. I don't oppose relocation. Mr. Yang. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Sin, for your comment. I will liaise with THB, and we will note the developments in this regard. Next, Mr. James Tian. Chairman, I'm so sorry because next door we have the meetings of concerning the West Kowloon development and also stamp duty legislation. We do not have particular views on the relocation proposal, like Mr. Sin Chung Kai said, and I think other members will give their support. Taikoo Place, at present, you just rent the place from them, and the place will be leased out. In fact, at Taikoo Place at present, this is a government-owned property. After relocation, we will consider relocating all government offices that are currently renting private properties there. All right, if there are no problems, the administration is minded to submit their proposal to PWSC in May and FC to June this year. Any views? you should really look at this, whether Siu Sai Wan spur line has any impact on your proposal, and please give us some information. I am very simple. My position is that I support the Siu Sai Wan extension or spur line. Of course, it will be constructed, but I'd like to know the impact. So please submit this information when you submit the funding proposal to PWSC. Yes, please do so. I'm sorry, Mr. Tian. Perhaps please include in the papers for the PWSC that the panel has not very thoroughly discussed this item, so that the PWSC, they can be discussed again. All right, I will wrap up this item. This item can be submitted to PWSC. Thank you. Anything on the AOB? If not, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.